Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're listening to this podcast. This is, well, slightly different to the usual Piano Rooms conversations because normally we would be across screens somewhere else on the planet, but today it's very special because I find myself in this awesome front room to be able to bring you piano room conversations in person. And my special guest this week is Derek.
Hey people, hello.
So,
Thank you, Danny.
so I'm banging the microphone. This is really quite a new setup, really, for us. We've literally just whopped up some iPhones and whatever else, and we're kind of seeing what we're capturing. So this is a first attempt at doing this. But Derek, it's so cool having. Now we go back. How far do we go back? It's a fair while now.
More than 10 years, I think, almost.
More than 10 years.
Happy anniversary then.
Happy anniversary. So you kind of know what the score is because you have seen some of the podcasts before.
Yeah, I have.
So you kind of know after the juicy goss, I'm kind of digging in deep, trying to catch you out. It's all good. So what we're trying to do is we talk about faith, ministry, family, the works really, and kind of just share hearts with all things to do with worship. We've done topics on the prophetic, we've done stuff on evangelism and things. But I know that you are a very, very keen worshipper as well. So we're going to sort of talk around those things. But let's go back to kind of your earlier days. So, where do you hail from? Where was your family base? Where were you born? Give us some of the early juicy stuff.
Ooh, I better sign a non-disclosure on that one. But no, nonetheless, we'll have an attempt. Well, I was born in Karachi, Pakistan, and my family kind of moved in my early years as a 5-year-old. We moved to Iran. My dad had a job there. We moved back to Pakistan. I finished my education there. But while I was doing that, I really was drawn into this place where there was a charismatic meeting in my neighborhood, and one of the friends said, "Why don't you come and have a look?" So I was born in a Catholic family, and as you know, it's very hard to leave one traditional thinking about your faith and upbringing and walk into something brand new. So they just said, "Why don't you come along and have a look?" I'm like, "Oh, fair enough." They were friends. What could harm? Walked into the meeting, sat there, and of course they were playing some nice early vineyard songs and stuff like that. And I had these sheets of music paper in front of me, so I was listening to the guy playing his guitar. I'm like, "Oh, that's nice," playing some nice chords and stuff like that. But then I was looking at this piece of paper that had this song, "It Is Well With My Soul," and on the second verse when it started, and the moment I started reading that, I was just blurting my eyes out, and I was just crying and weeping bitterly inside there. And I was on my knees for quite a while, and it felt like forever because my eyes were closed and I was weeping, and I had this amazing encounter where I felt that Jesus was walking in front of me, and he just placed his hand on my head and said, "Don't worry, just be there, stay in that place." And when I woke up, in a way, everyone was seated, someone was preaching, I think. I asked one of them later on, like, "How long was I kneeling?" And like, "Oh, probably around 30, 40 minutes. I had no recollection of that time frame of kneeling that long in that meeting. But something changed after that. I just wanted to get immersed in worship. I just wanted to understand the way that guy was playing his guitar and leading so profoundly and passionately with worship. And I'm like, that's where I want to be.
Wow! So that was really early on then. So
that was really early on.
Almost at your conversion, I suppose.
I think it was my road to Damascus moment,
Wow.
kind of with Jesus. I've been a faithful Catholic before that. I've been in church events and working around lots of charity things with the church. So my Christian upbringing was really nice, but that particular meeting set something aside, and I can't explain it, but it was something that said, I've got a new journey planned for you.
So were you already playing instruments at that point?
Yes, I was. So I was a musician then. I was playing in the band. I was playing drums then, and I was playing in the church choir, bass guitar and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I was really into music. So what attracted me again was someone playing guitar, but I'm hearing Christian songs in a very different acoustic, contemporary way of doing it, and I was, wow, this is great. I like this. I like this flavor of music. As you know, church songs, when we grew up, especially in the Catholic tradition was more hymnal, more kind of slow going, easy piano kind of stuff going on there. But this really kind of captured my heart. I'm like, okay, that's it. I want that. I want whatever that
like
is.
a different kind of expression, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, kind of jumping on then from there. So you kind of made it. How old were you at that time? So you were.
I think I was around 19, 20.
19. Okay, yeah, cool. So that's that's actually quite old, isn't it?
A long time ago.
A long time ago.
Far
Yeah. So from that point, then tell us about the journey. So you felt, I suppose, tell me if I'm overstating it, but I suppose Damascus Road experience felt like you were, wanting to lead worship, wanted to know a bit more about it. Yeah. So what was I suppose the first opportunity where you were kind of then put into that situation where you've had this calling and then I suppose you start living it out in an effective way?
Yeah, well, I think that continuation of that journey started at those meetings. So the next meeting I went for in the same place, I was like a sponge. I just wanted to know everything about the word. I wanted to know how these worship songs were created. So I would end up after the meetings talking to the guy leading worship on his guitar and say, "Oh, show me how you play that song." And he would come just sit with his guitar and show me the G chord sequence of whatever the songs were. And I would just go back home and pick my own guitar up and kind of memorize and play that at my own time. But I remember spending so much time with that person, grabbing sheets of music and paper from him, say, "Can I take that home?" and just kind of spend at least an hour or something just learning those songs. I didn't have a venue to kind of play that out at that point, but eventually I asked him, "Is it all right that I could join you to play worship at those meetings?" And he was absolutely, yeah, that'd be great, just join in. And then one day he said, "I'm not there for a particular meeting, but would you like to lead worship for that?" So I'm like, "Oh,
classic,
and
puts the fear of God in you."
Oh, massive fear of God coming through. I mean, I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure." He's like, "I know you can do it. Just get on with it and do it." So he gave me the opportunity, and then thankfully there was someone else who was playing keys, and that accompaniment really helped supported what I was leading. I think the first time I led worship, I sounded like a broken record. My voice was shattered. I think I was really, really over nervous. So, but thankfully the people in the room knew these songs, so they just took on with it. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not doing much. That's fine.
I think there's something to be said about starting out in a safe place, isn't there? In a community of people that actually, I suppose, kind of know you warts and all in a sense, but there's a lot of grace given.
Yes.
In those early years, and I think one of my passions really is to kind of, with the grace that I receive, similar to you, by the sounds of it, is that then is given to the young people that we kind of work with as well. Because I think certainly in today's society, I mean, I don't think I'm overstating, but it feels like a much more unsafe environment to what it used to be even when we were younger.
Yeah.
So they're dealing with a whole host of different things. We could talk about the social media aspect, and everything's always instant and all those things, where in our day we had probably the songs of fellowship and that was it. We went through, we picked a song, we sung it and all those kind of things. But there's something really special in safety when you're starting out, to be allowed to explore those things, but also make those mistakes, but in a way that's not going to be completely detrimental to what you then go on and do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will always remember and cherish those times where the people in that meeting were absolutely generous and gracious about, he's new, he's starting off with us. But I think what they kind of communicated to me was, "We are so happy you've discovered Jesus in a different way, and we just want to encourage that journey with you and be on the journey with you." And I think even with my false chords or shattered singing, they were happy that I was part of that community of believers. And I think for me that laid a very important part to play in the future of my own kind of journey, but also helping others and encourage them to say, "You know what, it doesn't matter what you sound like, it doesn't matter what you're playing like, what matters is your love for Jesus." And it's that showing, I think that's halfway through the job done. So that was a great...
It's his heart that he wants. Not even necessarily your skill. It's
and skill is great. I mean, as you know, I mean, you're phenomenally skilled, and skill is great. But I think skill compared to worshiping, I think it's a hand in glove situation. But I also think it's an important part to discover. Does God want me for my musical skills, or does He want me for my worshiping heart? And I think, going back to what Jesus said, He's saying there'll come a time when people won't worship here or there, and God's looking for true worshippers. And I've always wondered, what did that actually look like for musicians or for worship leaders? And I think being a worshiper front and foremost in the secret, and then emanating that in front of other people or at the church service, I think that takes more precedence than the skill. I think skill is important. I think David spoke about skilled musicians in the temple. But when it comes to worshiping hearts, I think that's the melody God wants to hear more. So I'm thankful that I feel that I can engage with that more. For example, like I remember once leading worship, and it was such an emotional part, singing Agnes Day, and I just stopped playing my guitar and I started singing, but my voice was cracking and I just couldn't sing. I put my guitar down and I was on my knees worshiping, but thankfully the congregation was just going on with this. I felt I was led into worship and I could be ministered to, as well as I was ministering before that. I felt like I was part of the worshiping community rather than the person leading the worship community.
Sure.
So that's great.
Sure. So 19, sort of leading worship, sort of journeying on. So I kind of get the feeling, and I say I kind of know you have moved around quite a bit. So what was the first location move then from there? Because were you there for a long period or?
No, not for too long. I think that was probably a year and a half mostly, or probably around 2 years max. The meeting kind of moved away from that particular house into a bigger venue because people were coming and growing. Thankfully, I was part of engaging others to kind of join in with the worship. And around the same time, I went to Dubai to find a job and kind of settle there. And thankfully, there were other worshippers leading that community, so I could easily move away.
Let's just step back. So you dropped a big bomb there.
Yeah, it's a gossip.
You moved to where?
To Dubai.
So just unpack that then. Was that just a happenstance? You thought, I know, I'm off to Dubai, or was there some kind
Oh no, it was in the pipeline. It was kind of in the making that I wanted to kind of get out there. My family was in Canada by then, right. Some of them, but the other brothers of mine were like, why don't you come to Dubai and try getting a job then see what God does with that. And I remember in the early days, people from the same worshiping community were like, if this is a move of God, you should take it, see what God wants to do. If it doesn't work, you can always come back. So I kind of went with that. I was nervous, obviously, as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old kind of thing, moving away from this. But once I landed in Dubai, I found a great church, a charismatic church that I was part of, and I just grew from there. But then the Catholic Church, some of my friends from the Catholic Church in Dubai were like, hey, we would love you to be part of the choir and love you to help us set this choir up. So I was kind of moving back and forth from the charismatic church to the Catholic Church, and I think that particular bit of my journey was more about how can I help others develop their worship while my own worship journey was being kind of developed. I think that was the best time of my life, just as a youngster, but being able to pass some of that knowledge on to other people and stuff. Yeah, it's great.
So let's talk about a bit about Dubai then. Is that where you met Fee, or?
Well, I met her in Abu Dhabi, but that was years later. So I stayed in Dubai almost 13 years.
Wow.
And then I moved to Abu Dhabi because there was a church plant happening there, and the church leaders from Dubai said, we would love you to be part of that particular church. Even that was kind of a miraculous situation where I was working in the real estate company and there was a property crash that happened in Dubai years ago. So lots of staff were made redundant, and I was like, with God, what's happening? The problem with working abroad, you are on a contract, so if your contract finishes or gets cancelled, you have to go back to your home country. You can't stay there. So I was stuck in between. God, what's happening? I've lost my job. I'm I need to stay in this land. And then one of the church pastors was like, we have this great opening in Abu Dhabi. Would you be up for it? And why don't you pray about this? Take a week and think about it and let us know. And I got back to him after a week and I said, you know what? I feel this is the God thing. I feel I want to go for this and pursue it. And the one thing he said to me, which really stands out, he said, I'm glad you said yes, because all our eldership unanimously decided that you should be the person for this job, but we didn't want to say it. We wanted you to make your own decision, but we're glad you said yes. So that felt like more of a confirmation that God wants me to move to Abu Dhabi. So yeah, I was part of the church there. Got involved with their worship, obviously, administration and other things, and that's where, of course, we met. We came to church one Sunday. And like, yeah, that was it.
So was Feast out there happenstance, or was that?
That was happenstance. She was with her friend up in Nepal in the mountains. Met this lovely young man over breakfast who happened to be a Christian as well, and they had started having the conversation around the breakfast table. And eventually, he said, "Oh, there's a great church in Abu Dhabi, and you should go have a look." So that's how she came to that particular church. But she never knew that same person she met was a good mate of mine from the Dubai church.
Wow.
So there was a kind of, again, I felt there was kind of a miraculous connection there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was like, because I asked him later, I'm like, oh, thanks for recommending someone, but we're getting engaged. He said, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. And he was, oh, I didn't know she was your fiance or wife to be, but he was really chuffed about it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
Wowzers. So obviously we had the privilege, Kate himself, coming out to see you guys in
Al Ain.
Was that Abu Dhabi?
It was Abu Dhabi, yeah.
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. So United Arab Emirates is divided into 7 emirates. So Dubai is one, Abu Dhabi is the capital, obviously, and then Abu Dhabi has a small but very significant town called Al Ain. And that's where most of the rulers of the land and the tribal rulers live and have their heritage there. So we moved there in the early days of, I think, 2012 or 13. And I was offered a job with the Evangelical Church as the worship and service pastor stuff. And that's when, of course, our paths crossed, because we came back to the UK and we met you at church and we're like, hey, in Sleaford, yeah.
How bizarre is that?
How bizarre is that? Well, it is.
Abu Dhabi all the way to Sleaford, Lincolnshire.
Yeah, I know. Well, Fiona's parents live around in Sleaford, Bruskington there.
Yeah.
And then we came to church one day and you were leading worship, and both Fiona and myself, we looked and said, this is sweet, sweet sound. And it was brilliant, and we felt so much at home, and the worship. Can I say this to you, Dan? Honestly, when you were leading worship that particular Sunday, I still remember the sound. I'm not sure what song it was, but the sound of that worship took me back to those early charismatic days of the presence of God, the atmosphere of worship. And that was really something that made me feel like, this is so good for my soul to take a break from my own responsibilities in the church, but to come away and still find being drawn into the same first love experience, if I can put it that way, with Jesus. So that worship was like, I loved it. And I think maybe that's why one of our reasons of our friendship growing was because I felt like you carried the same heart. Absolutely. Of that intimacy, of that deep, let's go deeper with God. Let's not just stay at the surface. Let's go deeper. And I think, I loved it. So thank you for that. But
bless you. No, it's great to be encouraged. I love that. So I remember when we came out, one of the experiences that I enjoyed was you had like the main like church, didn't you? So I suppose in essence most English speaking people or would want to service in English would be, but then when you go out into the forecourt at the back, you had like loads of different rooms with different nation groups in, if we put it that way. And the only way that I could describe it is it literally was, for that moment, is this what heaven like? Because you could stand in the middle and all the services were going on. Yeah. And I couldn't understand a word of what were going on, but there was such a presence in the place of all the different people groups worshiping, and in not, you know, we always say it kind of sort of over this way. We don't want like a Spanish Matt Redman or you know, if you're Spanish, be Spanish. If you, you know, and all the rest of it, and be true to yourself. And that probably was the only place really where I would say I've experienced that on that level, where this is just the nations of the world all in one place. Although, you know, they're own separate meeting, but you could just hear this roar of praise in so many different languages. Now, I can imagine that in some ways, if you were overseeing that, that would be quite a difficult thing to do as well.
Oh yeah.
Because obviously, you know, you've got all those isms as well, but then you're, in a sense, you've got your main church building as well, where people will be coming in and out of that, as well as their own kind of people groups and that. So, talk a bit about the multiculturalness of that, and how that managed in that situation, especially in a country like where you were, where, you know, it's all a massive melting pot of all those type of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, as you know, the United Arab Emirates is a beautiful country. It's got such a multicultural aspect to it, because people go there to work, and of course the pay is good. So obviously they stay on for after they finish their contracts or renew them. Because of that kind of transition, you meet so many people from different nations. The biggest thing for people coming across to the Middle East to work is to also find a home church that they can be part of while during the duration of their work job and so on. My part of my job was also to bring the visitor welcome experience or newcomers to church. Most of the people that came to the church that I was part of, which was the main church, were English speaking, but there were a few that trickled through speaking probably Filipino or language, or which is called Tagalog, or some of them were Nigerian, some of them were from other African countries, and I would always take them for a little tour around the buildings, as the one that you saw. So they had these rooms, which smaller churches or church of 40 or 50 or sometimes even 60 people would meet there during the week and have their own services in their own languages, which was absolutely brilliant. So I would take them and say, to show them, okay, that's the big signage that we had outside saying that's the church for people from Nigeria or Philippines or Nepal or Bangladesh. And they were just absolutely amazed. Like, they never knew that they could find all these languages and churches under one roof. Part of the beauty of that building was it was a sacred space for people to come and feel safe after the work and places. So there would be people throughout the week just sitting there in the corridor, sometimes sitting outside in the big courtyard, reading the Bible. There was a Bible bookstore there, had books from every languages. It felt, like you said earlier, it felt like, is this what heaven could look like?
Yeah.
It probably did. It probably did feel like to me in those early days when I moved them, like, wow, this is amazing. And the best part about that job, but also part about being part of that environment, was every Easter service, there would be a sunrise service. It starts at like 4 a.m. All the churches that met there, and there were like over 140 churches coming together. They would meet there under one roof and have a service in different languages, readings in different languages, worship songs in different languages. It takes me back to the words, every tribe, every tongue, every nation, just adoring and worshiping God. And it was absolutely brilliant. Yes, apart from that, there were also some complications where some people were just having a bit of a struggling time kind of settling in with the job, settling in with the community. And I think one of the beautiful parts about that environment was all church leaders worked together to make sure everyone had a place that they could call home. And I think I was privileged to be part of that. Yeah. It was brilliant.
So, would you say that the country is tolerant of sort of most religions then? There was no sense of kind of, well, you can't do that, you can't do that, or was it, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they are extremely tolerant. One of the nuggets of truth for people who wish to visit that place eventually or be part of it is the government is extremely tolerant with any nationality that comes through, or people of different religions. The only thing legally and lawfully they would advise anyone is to please don't go out in the streets and proselytize. Don't kind of stand there saying Jesus Lord and he's coming and fire and brimstone. They believe every religion should be respected but not shouted from the rooftops.
Okay.
So if you're not doing that, you're absolutely fine to worship in those areas that have been designated for Christians or people of different denominations.
I suppose you kind of raise an interesting question there, because would you say that you had native community growth, or was it mainly internationals coming in? So, like when you think about evangelism or what we're called to do, is it a place where obviously through community and through relationships you can do that? But did you see kind of local people coming to know the Lord and joining church?
There were a few local people that came through, but they weren't the type that would come and sit in a regular service and want to know about Jesus. They would be the ones who would have a discreet conversation with the church leader and say, I'm exploring another faith, or I'm exploring Christianity. And based on the land, there were people that wanted to come in and know about Jesus, but they couldn't openly profess that faith because their families wouldn't like it and it's dishonorable. So there were a few people, natives, that were interested in Christianity, and I'm sure there were people ministering to them and bringing them on the journey about Jesus, giving them books in their own language to go and read the New Testament and so on. I remember there was someone who was working there as a school teacher, but in their free time, that person was ministering to some of the natives in their language because he spoke it really well. And he did an amazing job with so many people, just exploring and talking about Jesus. Wow. One of the things the natives love there is conversations, because both their faith and Christianity, there's a kind of common ground of, we know that Jesus is important in the Bible and as well as in their own book, and he's a prophet. So there's lots of great conversations that can happen around that. And yeah, there's been some great, interesting conversations I've had with some natives as well. But most of the people coming to the churches are international expats, we would call them. And they came for the jobs, they came there to secure their families for a couple of years, get these kids in school. Kids were called third culture kids there because they kept changing countries, so they were the ones that were really most challenged. Like, I've got to go to a new place, a new school, new friends,
sure,
a new church. So it was really hard to, because I did a bit of youth work as well, it was really hard to get them to enjoy the stability that their parents were providing, to say, this is fine, this is all right, you're here for a few years, but hey, it's going to be good. But it was always a real challenge for these guys, young lads.
It sounds like the thing about, because my mum and dad were pioneer pastors,
right,
for Assemblies of God, so they'd go around planting different churches. So the stability issue in young people is actually quite big. Yeah. You know, a couple of years here, move on, a couple of years there, move on, and you kind of get to a place, what can you trust, what can't you trust, what's solid, what isn't solid. So it's lovely to know that you were kind of giving them that kind of stable base there, which was good. So if we had to come up with the highest point of being out there, and then the most challenging point, so if you take, we do whichever way when you want. If you want to depress people first and then make them happy, or you can make them happy, it's up to you. But what would you like? You know, this is your go-to. My experience out there on both those spectrums.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you'll probably laugh at this one. I'll start with the lowest point. The lowest point of being in that job, I think, was people understanding there is more than just singing worship songs. There's more to, and I'm going back to my job description in the context of what I've kind of observed, and I felt there's so much of learning here that's needed. There was lots of resistance with worship leaders and musicians, and they're like, well, I'm just on the rota, I want to serve. And I understand that's important, that's a great place to start, but we're not just here to serve, we're also here to develop as worshippers. That's been my biggest challenge. And And I'm glad that you could come over and do some worship with our team, and I'm glad that Richard Lewis came by. So the highest point of that little change for me was when Richard Lewis came by, and he had the entire church in a joyful laughter, roar or something, because he started preaching about joy, and there was something I remember that broke in the atmosphere in that church, and then worship was never the same after that. So I think Richard, if you're watching this, thank you, mate. You brought some amazing atmosphere changes in that church, but it really helped me personally in my journey to people like yourself and Richard to bring more credibility into this thing we call worship. Why do we do this thing called worship? And I think that church really took off after that. And of course, the second highest point of that was we had a gospel event where we had a lot of American, and they were so passionate about singing gospel music. And I love the fact that we could collaborate and bring them to our church venue and then do some amazing, beautiful gospel music. And that really, again, opened doors for so many people to enjoy it.
I'm just trying to think about that. Did Richard do a classic concert as well?
Yes, he did. Oh, I forgot to mention that, but
did,
that was another highlight.
Because Richard's an incredible sort of concert pianist as well, amongst all the other things that he does. And I think when he sits down at a piano and he goes into that like classical zone, it's like, you know what I mean, you could squirt him with water and he wouldn't flinch. He'd just be like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But phenomenal. So where was that?
That was in Arlene as well, the same place you guys came. And so Fiona arranged Richard to get involved with the classical community out there, and she had this big, massive hall kind of sorted out for him to do this. And the best part about that, all the people that attended it, I mean, of course, Richard was phenomenal with his classical music, but people could hear something different. They could hear someone singing when Richard was playing.
Wow. So
they felt like it didn't feel like a classical experience or music experience. It felt like more like a church worship service. And I'm talking about people that are, you know, like Christians, but not really like, you know, on probably on the frills of it. But they were like, there was something different. He was playing this amazing stuff, but I could hear people singing like a choir. I could hear music around me. So yeah, whatever Richard was carrying did work well and left a mark for sure.
So we're now leaving the most probably hottest, driest, deserty type place on the planet, and we're coming to
sunny UK.
Sunny, well, they do say we don't have seasons now; we just have weather.
Yes, we do have weather. Yeah.
And I can imagine, you know, that you probably buy all the thickest feathered coats and quilts.
I had to change my wardrobe overnight from these cotton shirts and sleeveless t-shirts to warm, furry friends in my closet. But it was brilliant. I mean, it was.
So you've been. How long have you been there? Because we are currently in Lincoln, and this is where you've lived, or you kind of descended to. So. Yeah. How long have you been in Lincoln?
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah,
7 years of freezing cold.
7 years of freezing cold. I've lost my tan. I think I used to be darker, but now I'm fairer. I'm almost like your color, Dan, which is a great thing. Yeah, almost. Well, it's the lighting. It's the lighting. Sorry, maybe not.
So here's the thing, Matt. This is one thing that we've not spoken about. Not only are you a worship extraordinaire, but you are. I was literally going to down like really insult you then because I had in my head to cook. I was like, no, he doesn't work in a private school. He's not, you know, cooking, you know,
behind the canteen.
Oh, okay. You are a fully qualified. And did you train that when you were out?
Yes, so I trained in Dubai. I did my qualification there in classically trained chef.
So is that all that kind of?
Yeah, all the shebang and all the dressing and French words and cooking and
the seriously reduced portion sizes
and the sauces and all small sizes like I need a proper meal, you know. I can't do this. No, I was classically trained there. It was great, and part of the journey was we felt God was calling us back to the UK, and when we came back here, I needed to get qualified to do something else outside of church life, and we felt that the chef's qualification was the best thing. So when we came back to the UK and we moved to Lincoln, we opened a small experimental kind of used the venue at the Lincoln Market to experiment with our food and our sales on that and see what works, and we called it Curry Jacks. Thankfully, it did great. We got a food truck on the back of that, and then COVID happened. As you know, during COVID, lots of people lost their businesses, shut down, couldn't kind of continue investing. But I think, again, this is a God thing. God used our food truck to go to different places and provide people with food because they weren't allowed to come out of the house. So we could pop up to different places in town or villages and say, please pre-order, we're here, come and collect your meal. Of course, all socially distanced. And that really helped us keep us afloat. And we're like, God, okay, you must be doing something right with this business. So we kind of pursued that and never looked back. So it's been great.
Great. I mean, and before we came and did this recording, it was a very nice curry that we had.
Oh, well, thank you. It was leftovers, but thank you.
And there's something, well, yeah, but leftovers are great.
Oh, yeah, it tastes better the next day, for me especially. I love it the next day.
And there's something magical it does with jacket potatoes.
Magic dust.
If you look on YouTube somewhere, I think there's like
to the tune of Barry White.
To the tune of Barry White, you're massaging the potato. Yeah, maybe don't go there. But you just need to know that it is a magical potato, and there is some seasoning on there that absolutely hits the spot. Actually, I would say, if you are dying for a curry and a jacket potato, I would travel. Do you know what I mean? Birmingham,
it's worth it.
Birmingham, Liverpool, London, Nottingham.
That's too. It might be a bit of a distance, but yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, they can see where you're popping up in Lincoln on the old internet.
Yeah.
Come up on a Friday, whenever it is. Grab yourself one of those things, and you would be very glad you did.
No, bless you.
I'm looking at that camera. It could be that camera, or it could be that camera. Any one of those things. So, a successful chef. A great worship leader, a great friend, and really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
What I'd love you to do is to like and share and tell people all about this Piano Rooms conversation. You can pick it up on the YouTube site there, and it also will be coming up on your Facebooks and all your other social medias. And on there's so many guests that have come on. We've got Chris Bowater, we've got Helen Yusoff, we've got Mark Greenwood, and we go right across the church spectrum, different streams, different expressions, and talk about faith, life and ministry, and that's what I love to be able to do. So comment in the box up, down below, wherever that might be, anything that you've liked about this or anything that you may not like. We don't mind those. We can listen to those and see if we can develop and do things better. This is also going to be an audio podcast as well as this visual one, so that site will be up and running soon as well. So stay well, stay blessed and stay safe, and we shall see you next time for Piano Room Conversation. This has been Danny Oates, King's Chambers, and that's been
Chef
Derek. Bye everyone, take care.
Thank you guys. Bye.